Oh, hi. I'm Owlbear Rogue. Welcome to the cave. We officially hit 400 subscribbles this week. My video on running a no prep one shot has taken off a little bit, which surprised me. It's one of the longer ones that I've done. Check it out if you haven't yet. And if you found us because of that video, check out some of the other sweet, sweet content I've left around. It's tantalizingly unattended for you to steal. I posted a poll about how we should celebrate our delightful little community growing. And you all decided you wanted a new dungeon to run off with and plant in one of your games. And I'm, as always, happy to oblige. You all know, obviously, I love Dungeons and Dragons. And for a while now, I've been thinking about a dungeon in a dragon. A dungeon in the lair of a dead Greatwyrm, including a section that takes place inside the skeleton of the beast. I had a hard time deciding which kind of dragon I wanted it to be. I've been kicking around a one-shot set in a crystal desert for a while, so I really thought about doing a crystal dragon as a potential add-on to that adventure, make it a two-shot instead of a one-shot. And I think I probably will do that in the future. But ultimately, as I was poking through Fizban's Treasury of Dragons, I got most inspired by the Deep Dragon. I adore the Underdark as a setting, and I decided I wanted to do a dungeon that would really scratch the itch for a classic traditional Underdark adventure. Fizban's describes the Deep Dragon, quote, as the nightmarish cousin of the chromatic dragons. It lives in secret caves that you have to maybe dive underwater to reach. I really liked that. They carve out complex tunnels in the Underdark for escape and ambush, and for their gardens of fungi. That's right. That is my favorite part. Wherever the deep dragons hang out, Underdark mushrooms flourish. Now, imagine this great worm with his lair full of fungi dies, and his own enormous decaying body then feeds the mushrooms. What a wild, wild place that would be. Might something of the spirit of that dragon remain, floating in the spores of the fungi that it fed? This dungeon can be its own one-shot. It can be a side quest for your party if they find themselves in the Underdark. Or you could take the basic concept and structure, redress it, and fit it into just about any campaign you may be running. As always, I tend to design for players between level 3 and 5 unless I'm specifically going for something high level. But there are so many ways you can fine-tune the difficulty here. Turn the knob up or down as you see fit. You're a great DM. You've got this. I trust you. Something to keep in mind, you always want your players to be comfortable, of course. I would warn folks in your group that there may be descriptions of people in distress in water, of NPCs who've been enslaved, and the Underdark in general can feel a bit claustrophobic when you're describing it. Just give them a heads up, make sure everyone's down with what you have planned. The baddies of this adventure are going to be the Duergar. I know, there are different ways that people say that word. Chris Perkins is on record that there are two canonically correct pronunciations, Duergar and Duergar. I like Duergar. You can call them Aunt Matilda at your table, and I say more power to you. The Duergar are a classic Underdark villain, and they're going to do what they do best, capture slaves and put them to work. For the purposes of this dungeon, the Duergar have taken over the lair of the dead Deep Dragon. They're transporting slaves down into the decayed belly, and you get to decide to what end. You also get to decide why your party needs to follow them down there. Why do they care? There's a lot of options to choose from. Maybe someone the party loves has been stolen away by this band of dark dwarves. Maybe they're from a community that they've been preying on, or that community has hired the adventurers to get their kin back and put a stop to this threat once and for all. Perhaps they've heard the Duergar are using the slaves they gather to dig for the dragon's buried hoard, and they just love shiny things. Who doesn't? Or maybe they're using the captives as sacrifices to try to resurrect the spirit of the Greatwyrm for some nefarious purpose the party needs to thwart. Whatever why you land on, the adventure begins on the beach of a cold, black, deep Underdark lake. A band of about a dozen Duergar, enough to deter the party from immediately attacking, have hauled a cage full of captives down onto this beach. As the kind of narrative cutscene to introduce your players to the scenario, describe how they watch from a safe distance, confused why the Duergar would come here when there's nowhere else to go and no boats in sight. Talking gruffly among themselves, the Duergar pull strange masks out of their bags and put them on. Your party watches baffled as they then proceed to pull a single captive out of the cage. If one of the party speaks Duergan, you can give them more information here, but they're most likely just going to hear a lot of talk they don't understand, and then suddenly one of the Duergar speaking to the captives in common. Stay still and get a good deep breath before we go under. The chief can still find ways to use ya if you're a soggy corpse, but he prefers ya fresh. The captives start to panic, but moving quite quickly now, the dwarves toss the single captive into the water, where they're quickly pulled under by something that roils the surface. The rest of the dwarves jump in, pulling the cage of now frenzied captives with them. You doubt they all managed to heed the slaver's advice and take a good deep breath to get to whatever God's forsaken place they're going. You tell all this to the players and describe the water quickly returns to glass-like stillness. If it weren't for the tracks in the sand, you'd think you'd imagined the whole thing. If you don't want to lose them, you'll have to find a way to follow, quickly. What do you do? They know there's something hungry in the water. They know wherever they need to swim to, it's at least short enough that the Duergar expect some of the captives not to drown in the time it takes to get there. And they know they need to hurry. Let them prepare and decide how they're going to proceed. Once they're in the water, there's a few things they're going to need to figure out. 1, where are they going? Do they see anything else interesting? And what are they going to do about the monster that's attacking them? When I run this, I plan to use a creature here from the official adventure Out of the Abyss, which is the big D&D Underdark campaign. In there, they have a vampiric manta ray-like creature called an Ikzitzachitl. You can call me out on that pronunciation if you want. Chris Perkins has in no way condoned that attempt. This creature's a challenge rating 2. It's got a vampiric bite and a barbed tail. I know that not everyone is a nerd for having all the books the way I am, though. Or maybe you're running a different system. And there's lots of different ways to build an appropriate creature. Take a shark stat block and replace the bite with a sting, or just leave it as a shark and describe it physically looking however you want. I would check out pictures of real extinct shark species for inspo. Take a giant scorpion or some other creature you like and just give it a swim speed. Oh, you could take the piranha mimics from my mimics video, check that out, and put them down there. Whatever kind of creature strikes your fancy, your party has got a fight on their hands once they enter the water. A DC 12 perception check shows them a tunnel ahead with dim light coming from it. You can also add interesting items along the bottom of the pool of the relatively shallow water right here. They might tempt the PCs to take risks, to spend a little more time checking them out. I would definitely put a few of the strange masks the Duergar were wearing down there, like maybe some of the Duergar didn't make this passage. You'll want to brush up on underwater combat stuff in whatever system you're running. There's a tiny bit about it in the PHB. A lot of it's open for interpretation and very imperfect. There are actually several great videos that were done during Kraken Week. You can check out the Kraken Week playlist for different creators. They're trying to make underwater combat better. I think they've got some great ideas. Show them some love and check those out. Hopefully your players all make it past the mean monster or monsters you've put in the water, you tyrant, and emerge into a tunnel. If you've listened to my other adventures and dungeons, you know I like to give you options for how long you can make something. If you want to skip these next parts and just take your party straight to the skeleton of the Greatwyrm, feel free to do that. These next 2 bits are optional. I would love when they emerge for there to be some kind of creepy, underdark, spider-like beast of burden corralled down there for the Duergar to use once they get into the tunnel. The party of evil dwarves presumably took some of them, but there may be others still there. Your party could possibly speak with animals and find out more, or do a great animal handling check, and now they have mounts that know their way through this maze-like place. I would give these creatures a bit of an edge, maybe show that another captive was tossed to them to keep them happy. They're sated for now, but if the PCs really mess up, they might have another combat on their hands. If you think your players might get frustrated having 2 captives sacrificed so far with no chance to save them, you could make this one injured, but possibly savable. If you have time, the journey through the tunnels to the dragon skeleton has a lot of potential for classic Underdark creatures and scenarios. I would include an encounter with a group of flail snails. I don't know why I love flail snails so much, but the heart wants what it wants. Have you seen the official mini for the flail snail? Come on, so amazing. That could be a combat or just something they encounter for flavor. I would definitely have them navigating some dangerous, thickly packed fungi giving off spores. Maybe they drive you mad. Maybe they're poison. Maybe some of them blow up. So much fun to be had with fungi. This whole section is easy to get lost in for your players if that's your thing. I can't lie, I actually find parties getting lost, even though it's realistic. 9 times out of 10, it's frustrating, narratively unsatisfying, and just not very fun. There's a time and a place for it, for sure, but I tend to not penalize parties very much in that way. The party has tracks to follow. They may have mounts who are familiar with the correct path. Give them several ways to get it right the first time. Eventually, your players will make it to the colossal skeleton of a dead Deep Greatwyrm. I envision this as the creature having been crushed when its lair caved in on it during some legendary battle of days gone by. What the PCs see is an enormous torchlit skull emerging from the rubble. They need to make their way inside. You could have a fight with a few obvious Dwergar guards here, the possibility to maybe get a few more of those mysterious masks. You could have it be a simple dex check to try to make it through the rows and rows of razor-sharp teeth at the entrance. I really like the idea that the Dwergar have rigged the jaw to open and close like a portcullis, or maybe set a trap so that if you don't step just the right way through, the jaw closes on you. There could be a few hidden guards who set off the trap if the party didn't detect them as they approached. Hopefully your PCs make it past that obstacle because it would do a lot of damage. And they make it down the gullet of the beast. Inside the cavernous, rib-lined chest cavity, the Dwergar have their captives busy doing whatever it is you decided they wanted them to do. Clearing rubble in search of the dragon's hoard, mining a valuable mineral only found where great worms have decayed, searching for a long-lost item of incredible power, preparing an arcane ritual to resurrect the worm and bind it to their will. The fun thing for your players to notice here, if they haven't already, is that the masks the Dwergar are wearing didn't actually have anything to do with the water. This space is filled with fungi releasing controlling spores. Sitting in a prominent spot somewhere around the pelvis is the Dwergar's chief or spiritual leader, whatever you choose, directing all the slaves who are being mind controlled by these spores. The masks protect the Dwergar from their effects. Hopefully your party has enough or can get their hands on them soon, or they may find themselves obeying the chieftain's will instead of fulfilling their mission. It should be really interesting to see how your party tackles this big, mostly open space with so many innocent bystanders and potentially so many enemies. And of course, part of that will depend on the goal you've decided on for them. Are they trying to stop a ritual, rescue someone in particular, rescue all the captives, wipe out this rogue band of Dwergar so they can't harm anyone else? Out of the Abyss has a treasure trove of different Dwergar stat blocks for you to use, depending on the different roles you want the Dwergar to have. If you don't have access to that, then you can always use the NPC stat blocks that are more commonly available and slap some Dwergar characteristics on them. However the scenario unfolds, I would include a part where the spirit of the dragon communicates with the party through the spores. What does the worm think of all this? Is it going to try to make your PC's lives harder? Might they persuade it to somehow aid them against the Dwergar who've defiled its ancient home? I would name him Ekon, Fangs of the Deep Shadows. Tell me in the comments all about how you would flesh out, if you will, this epic monster. Could your PCs do a history check to remember tales of this beast and the heroes that slew it? Might there be a legendary weapon hiding around here somewhere? So much potential. How would you play it? There you have it, folks. Did we break the mold with this dungeon? Get it? Mold. Fungus. Spores. We're in the Underdark anyway. No, this is a pretty classic little adventure, and that's what I wanted it to be. I want your players to finish this and feel like, oh boy, we Underdarked so hard. That was much Underdark. Big yes, classic. Thank you so much for listening and being a part of this little community and celebrating with me as that community grows. You all are my heroes. You can save me from the Underdark anytime, or just join me there. The caves are to die for. As I said earlier, you all contributed to this video by answering a poll about what I should do. I post polls pretty regularly, so if you want the chance to give me feedback on the content you want, subscribe and hit that notification button. Thank you, truly thank you, as always, for exploring the feminine urge to run around the Underdark with me, Owlbear Rogue.